The next morning began with noise and confusion in the Carter household. The sun had barely risen when Richard Carter's phone rang again and again. Wow. His assistant's voice came through sounding tense. News articles had already spread across the business world. Every headline carried the same message. Grant Innovations had canceled the partnership with Carter Holdings. Richard sat at the edge of his bed, staring at the phone in shock. Margaret hurried into the room holding a newspaper. She read a section aloud, each word hitting like a hammer. Olivia Grant had pulled back from the $500 million deal with no explanation to the press. Richard shouted for Ethan. His voice echoed through the halls. Ethan came down the stairs, still wearing yesterday's tired expression. He had not slept well. The memory of the spilled wine and the strange calm in Olivia's face kept replaying in his mind. Richard pointed at him in anger. "Do you see what you've done?" Ethan frowned, not understanding. "What do you mean?" "Everything your father worked for is now at risk." Ethan's chest filled with cold fear. "Because of last night?" "Yes," Richard said with a voice that shook between anger and panic. "You embarrassed her in front of everyone. You ruined what took months to build." Ethan could barely speak. "It was an accident. I tried to apologize." Richard slammed his hand on the table. "An accident that cost us $500 million is no accident. Do you realize how much damage this will cause?" Margaret tried to calm her husband, but her face was pale too. She looked at her son and spoke softly. "Go to your room. Let us think." Ethan turned away as they argued behind him. His pride felt smaller with every step. He could hear the distant hum of traffic and the quiet buzz of city life. For the first time, the noise of success sounded far away from him. At Grant Innovations, Olivia sat in her glass-walled office surrounded by tall buildings. Morning light filled the room. Her assistant entered carrying her coffee and the latest reports. Olivia read them carefully. She saw the market's reaction to her decision. Some questioned why she canceled the deal when it was nearly signed. She did not offer any statement. She believed in actions rather than words. She remembered the scene at the gala. The laughter, the careless tone of the Carters, especially the dismissive smile that followed the spilled wine. It had not been about the stain on her dress. It had been about respect. If they could laugh at another person in public, then they could treat partners the same way in private business. Trust was earned, not inherited. By canceling the deal, she sent a message not only to them, but to everyone watching. The once untouchable family looked suddenly small in the face of pressure. Ethan watched from his window. He felt powerless as his father argued on phone calls and his mother tried to protect their image. For the first time in his life, no amount of money or influence could fix the mistake. Guilt pressed on his chest like a heavy stone. By evening, he decided to leave the house. He needed air and space to think. He drove through the quiet streets, remembering how everything had seemed bright only one night earlier. Now, under the streetlights, the world felt different. He stopped near a park and sat on a bench, watching the wind move through the trees. A group of children played in the distance. Their laughter sounded pure and light, nothing like the cold laughter at the gala. He wondered when he had grown into someone careless enough to think that other people's dignity did not matter. Meanwhile, Olivia met with her top managers. They reviewed potential new partners. She listened patiently, but part of her mind replayed Ethan's expression from that night. He had looked more surprised than rude. Still, she decided her choice had been necessary. It would remind influential families that power must be handled with respect, not arrogance. Back at the Carter house, night fell heavy. Richard sat in silence, staring at his phone, hoping Olivia would answer his calls. Margaret sat beside him, eyes tired from worry. Ethan stood near the door, unsure if he was allowed to speak. Finally, his mother looked at him and said quietly, "You need to fix what you have broken." Ethan nodded slowly. He knew it would not be easy. Olivia Grant was not someone who would forgive empty words. If he wanted to make things right, he would need to face her. Not as the spoiled son of a wealthy family, but as a man willing to change. He went to his room and looked out over the dark city skyline. Every building light reminded him of how much power and pride surrounded his life. Yet he felt more lost than ever. Somewhere far away, Olivia Grant continued her work with the same calm strength that had quietly shaken his world. Did not yet know what he would say to her, but he knew one thing clearly. This time he would speak with more than words. Ethan spent the next 2 days thinking about what he should do. The house felt tense and heavy. His father made calls to everyone who might help repair their image, but no one had answers. Margaret stopped going to her social events. She stayed in her study, reading the same page of a book without noticing. Ethan knew everything had changed because of one careless act. He wanted to apologize, not just with words, but with honesty. He searched online for contact details of Grant Innovations. He found the office address and decided to go there himself. He did not tell his parents. He just wanted a chance to speak. When he arrived at the tall glass building, he felt nervous for the first time in years. The security guard at the front desk asked his name and purpose. Ethan said he had no appointment, but wanted to see Miss Olivia Grant. The guard raised an eyebrow but made a call anyway. After a short pause, he nodded and pointed toward the elevator. Ethan stepped inside. His reflection stared back at him from all sides. He did not look like a confident heir anymore. He looked like a man uncertain of his own worth. When the door opened, an assistant greeted him politely and led him through a quiet hallway filled with portraits of past projects and inventions. Each image showed Olivia's company doing something meaningful. It made Ethan realize how little he had done that mattered. When the assistant opened the door to the office, Olivia was sitting behind her desk typing on her laptop. The city skyline stretched behind her through the large windows. She did not look up right away. Ethan waited, feeling the silence grow between them. Finally, she closed her laptop and met his eyes. "I'm surprised to see you here," she said. Her voice sounded calm, neither warm nor cold. "I came to say I am sorry, Miss Grant," Ethan said. "I did something foolish, and I deserve every bit of the blame." She did not answer immediately. Instead, she leaned back in her chair and studied his face. "You were sorry for spilling wine, or sorry because your family lost money?" Ethan lowered his eyes. "Both, I suppose, but mostly because I was disrespectful. I saw how you looked that night, and I could tell you were not angry. You were disappointed. I'll never forget that." Olivia stood up and walked to the window. The city looked far below, filled with moving cars and endless lights. "The world you come from teaches you that money can fix everything," she said. "But money cannot fix character. I canceled the deal not out of revenge, but because I do not work with people who laugh at others' dignity." Ethan listened quietly. Her tone was not harsh, but each word felt like truth pressing into him. "I understand," he said softly. "You were right to cancel it. I just hope one day I can show you I am not that kind of person anymore." Olivia turned to him. "That is not something you can tell me. It is something you must prove to yourself first. As people see what you do, not what you promise." He nodded slowly. "Then I will try to become someone better, not to win anything back, but because I need to." Her expression softened slightly. She walked back to her desk and picked up a small folder. "Do you know about our mentorship program?" Ethan shook his head. "It is for young entrepreneurs without family support," she said. "They come from hard backgrounds, but still build something of value. We teach them how to lead with empathy. If you really wish to learn, you can volunteer there. You will not be paid. You will serve tea, carry boxes, and observe. It will show you what respect means in simple effort." Ethan agreed immediately. "I will do it." Olivia looked at him for a long moment, then nodded. "Fine. My assistant will schedule you for next week." "I am not doing this for you. I am doing it for the lesson you need." Ethan smiled faintly. "That is fair." As he turned to leave, Olivia spoke again. "Do not expect anyone there to treat you like a Carter. They will not care who you are." "I hope they don't," Ethan replied before walking out. When he stepped outside the building, the air felt clearer than before. He had faced her and had not been destroyed. Instead, he felt something new inside him, a quiet sense of purpose. He drove home thinking of what she had said about proving worth through actions. At home, Richard was still angry when he learned where Ethan had gone. But Margaret watched her son carefully. She noticed the calm in his eyes and said nothing. Ethan went to his room, opened his computer, and read about the mentorship program. He wanted to understand what it would demand of him. He lay down that night not with guilt, but with determination. The red stain in his memory still remained, but now it reminded him of change. Somewhere across the city, Olivia finished her day feeling curious about whether Ethan Carter would truly keep his word. Neither of them knew that this simple decision would begin to tie their lives together in new ways. Ethan started the volunteer work the next Monday. He arrived early at the Grant Mentorship Center, which was a few blocks away from the main company building. The place was not fancy like he was used to. The floors were made of plain tiles, and the smell of fresh paint still hung in the air. "You must be Ethan Carter," she said. "Miss Grant told me you would join us. We start work in 5 minutes. Here's your badge." Ethan took the badge and nodded. "Thank you. What should I do first?" Clara pointed to a stack of chairs. "Set those up in the meeting room. We have a workshop for young business students later. After that, you can help check the computers. They need cleaning and testing." Ethan rolled up his sleeves. He was not used to physical work, but he did not complain. He carried chairs one by one, wiped off dust, and arranged them neatly in rows. Sweat ran down his forehead, but for the first time in a long while, he felt useful. By midday, the young mentors and students began to arrive. Many of them were from modest families. They worked hard, asking questions about business and technology. She stepped into the room while Ethan was fixing a projector that was not working. He did not notice her until she said, "I did not expect to see you under a table." "I promised to help," he replied with a small smile. She nodded. "How was your first day?" "It's harder than I thought," he said honestly. "But it feels good to do something that actually matters." Olivia walked around the room watching the students discuss their ideas. "The people you see here build their own success," she said. "That is what I want to teach them, and maybe you too." Ethan nodded again and returned to his work. She stayed for a few more minutes before leaving. Once she was gone, Clara came over and said quietly, "Miss Grant does not often visit this center in person. You must have made quite an impression." Days turned into weeks. Ethan showed up every morning before the others and left only after the rooms were clean. First, many of the volunteers did not talk to him much. They thought he would quit after a few days. But when they saw his patience and his way of listening instead of showing off, they began to accept him as one of them. He helped organize events, pack supplies, and even teach basic business lessons that he had picked up from his family company. In return, he learned small but valuable lessons from the people there. He learned that respect could not be demanded. It had to be earned through consistent effort. One evening, the Mentorship Center planned a small presentation for the students. Ethan was checking the lights and adjusting a microphone when Olivia arrived again. This time, she looked less serious and more at ease. She stood at the back and watched as Ethan worked with the others. After the presentation ended, most people left. Olivia walked over and saw Ethan cleaning the floor where someone had spilled juice. His sleeves were rolled, and his shirt was stained with dust. She smiled lightly. "You are the heir to a huge company, yet here you are wiping floors. That is something." For the first time, Olivia laughed. The sound surprised both of them. It was soft and real. "You have changed," she said after a pause. "I had to," he replied. "My old life was too loud. This place taught me more than any office ever could." He nodded. "Yes. It is not something you can buy. It is something you earn a little bit every day." "Thank you for giving me a chance to start over." He felt part of something greater than money or family power. It was the first sign that she might finally believe in his change. At home, Richard asked him to return to the company office, saying enough time had been wasted. But Ethan only smiled and said he had work at the center tomorrow. His father did not understand, but Margaret quietly supported him. She said, "You look happier than before. Maybe this is good for you." Ethan went to bed tired but calm. He did not know where the path would lead, but for the first time, he felt he was walking in the right direction. Winter came quietly that year, laying a soft chill over the city. The mentorship program had grown quickly, and Ethan still worked there every week. He no longer came because he felt guilty. He came because he wanted to help. Everyone at the center now treated him like a friend instead of a stranger from a famous family. Even Clara often relied on him to plan small events or fix broken equipment. Olivia visited more often as well. Whenever she entered the room, the air seemed to change. People straightened up, and smiles spread around. Ethan noticed that she had a different side when she was at the center. She was less like the serious CEO and more like a teacher who cared deeply about her students' future. One afternoon, after a long workshop, Olivia asked Ethan to stay behind. The rest of the volunteers left, leaving them alone in the quiet hall. She stood near the windows watching the city below while he packed some folders. "You have done good work here," she said. "Clara tells me you show up early every morning." "That is unexpected." Ethan smiled softly. "At first I did it to prove something. Now I do it because I like who I am here. It feels like building something real." Olivia turned toward him. "The world sees change in small actions. You may not notice it, but you are not the same person I met at that gala." "I hope not," Ethan said. "That version of me deserved to fail." She walked closer, her arms folded lightly. "Failure is not the end if you learn from it. You took it as a lesson, not a punishment. That makes a difference." He looked down at the stack of papers in his hand. "You taught me that. The night you said money cannot buy character, it stayed in my mind. I used to think wealth protected me, but it only made me blind." Olivia studied him for a moment, then gave a thoughtful nod. "I see it now. What are you going to do next?" Ethan took a breath. "I was thinking of creating a small side project for the center. Some of the students have good ideas, but no funding. I can use part of my own savings to support them. Nothing big, but it could help a few start their first business." A look of surprise touched her face. "That is a generous idea, but why would you spend your money on them?" "Because I owe this place more than I can repay," he answered. "They help me find meaning. It is worth more than any profit." Olivia smiled faintly. "Maybe you have finally learned what true wealth means." Weeks later, the small project began. Olivia supported it and allowed Ethan to lead. Together, they created a program that gave young entrepreneurs tools and small funds to start sustainable businesses. During those weeks, they spent long hours in meetings, sharing ideas, planning goals, and sometimes laughing over small mistakes. It brought them closer than either had expected. At home, Margaret noticed her son's new energy. He spoke with excitement about his days instead of complaining. Even Richard, who had once been furious, began to see the changes. Slowly, he respected his son's decision to work alongside Olivia again. When the new year started, Grant Innovations held another gala event. It's time to celebrate the success of the partnership project. The Carters were invited. Ethan hesitated at first, remembering the night everything had fallen apart, but Olivia encouraged him to attend, saying it was time to close that chapter. The ballroom looked as bright as before, but Ethan felt different walking in. He wore a quiet confidence that did not come from pride. When he saw Olivia near the stage, he walked up to her carrying 2 glasses of wine. He handed one to her carefully. "This time I promise not to spill it," he said with a smile. She took the glass and laughed gently. "If you do, I know you will clean it up yourself." They stood together as the music played and the crowd cheered for the new project. For once, Ethan did not feel like he was part of a performance. He felt like he belonged there because of who he had become. When it was his turn to speak, he thanked Olivia publicly for believing in giving people second chances. His words came from the heart, not from a script. The audience responded with warm applause. Olivia felt a quiet pride watching him stand tall, not as the spoiled son she once met, but as a man who had earned respect. Later that night, as the event ended, Ethan and Olivia walked out to the terrace. The winter air was cool, and the city lights shimmered below them. Ethan looked at her and said, "If that night never happened, I would still be the same careless person. Thank you for making me face it." Olivia smiled softly. Sometimes change begins with mistakes. You just have to be brave enough to learn from them. He looked at her, and for a long moment neither spoke. There was understanding between them, built on trust and respect. The mistakes of the past had turned into something rare and valuable. As they left the terrace side by side, Ethan felt that the red wine incident had been the start of everything good. The laughter that once mocked had turned into something warm and real, and in the quiet rhythm of their steps, a new story was already beginning. Written not by money but by hearts that had learned to see each other clearly.